Yes, we are talking about Mike Zimmer again. And yes, it has been almost a week since the last time I made a video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. It is Mr. Cowboys Fan. Of course, before we proceed, leave a like and subscribe. It is I, Mr. Cowboys Fan, where we talk about cowboy things. Alright, so basically, to give a little bit of an explanation, basically in my city, we had, a tornado and it blocked out, just a whole power outage and stuff for like a minute. I'll say that, a minute. It was a hot minute, like a day or two, like just an absolute, like power outage. And then even after, it came back on, you know, no internet or service, like for basically about another, like couple of days. So even when I was planning, on making this video then, there were just, some, things, a natural disaster that kind of, of course, put that, just kind of put that a little bit, on hold for a bit, but I'm back. So to any of my audience that are, watching this video, yes, I am back. So what I wanted to talk about was Mike Zimmer again. Last time, of course, that we talked about Mike Zimmer, we talked about, like him and as far as his plan that he has for what he wants to do with this defense and my thoughts on basically this team is going to be more physical and is going to be more fundamentally sound. Forget the fast and flying to the football, sideline to sideline, goal line to goal line stuff. We that will continue to be proceeded, but it's also about this team, this defense bringing back a bit of physicality to this defense more than anything, and being fundamentally sound, and that's basically what Mike Zimmer is planning on trying to bring to the table, and that's basically what we went over, of course, last time. So I looked on an article, and it was about Mike Zimmer. And Mike Zimmer basically talking about how he's going to be on the sidelines for games. And basically to tell it to you like this. Here was Mike Zimmer, on being on the sideline for games. I've always been on the sideline, number one. Number two, I want to catch them when they come off the field so I can talk to them. If there's adjustments that need to be made, then I want to be able to sit down and do them with them. And I know you're probably wondering, like, why are, you're probably wondering, Mr. Cowboys Fan, why are you, telling this to us? We know that, like, that's, common sense, like, obviously when you're on the sidelines, those are the sort of things that you would want to do. Now, there are some coordinators who feel like they need a, bird's eye view of the field to see everything that's going on, so they can be able to make adjustments. But if you are not the thing is, if you're not being able to make them one-on-one with your players, then it, handicaps things a little bit. And Dan Quinn, from what I remember, only was on the sidelines one time in his coaching tenure with the Cowboys, as our defensive coordinator. He was on the sidelines one time, and that was because he was, taking over for Mike McCarthy, who, had tested positive for COVID, so he couldn't be out there for that game. So Dan Quinn had to, come in as a substitute. And that was the only time that he ever, was on the sidelines. And I felt like, for the most part, it worked out pretty good, you know? So that game was actually against the Saints, where we held them to 17 points, and we also intercepted them 4 times, I believe. So I think for the most part, it worked out pretty well. But, that's my point. When you're on the sidelines, I feel like it's a bigger advantage when you feel like there are adjustments that need to be made. You can easily make those with your players because you're being able to be one on one with them being on the sidelines. Of course, this is why I wanted to use this slide, this picture, just to give you a little bit of an idea. Zimmer on the sidelines, being with his players, being able to look over some stuff and maybe be able to talk to them about it. Now this has nothing to do with the Cowboys, but I would like to clarify and point out last year the San Francisco 49ers, who, like, granted, I will say, like, their defense has always been great over the past, several years, few years. But of course, last year, their defensive coordinator was now Steve Wilks. And in the early going of that season, their defense had a little bit of, struggles. They weren't as consistent. They weren't as dominant and as much of a powerful, immovable object as they had been previously, And some were making their, accusations, well, not accusations, but their assumptions on, whether that's just that Steve Wilks is a fraud, and can't, coach the defense the same way D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh was able to do. And then others were saying, well, maybe it's just a scheme, an adjustment thing. And I think Steve Wilks had basically come to that, conclusion. And after their 3-game losing streak, where they lost to Cleveland, Minnesota, and Cincinnati, Steve Wilks decided to make the change from being in the booth to being on the sidelines. And from that point forward, after the 49ers started the year of mediocre 5-3 at that point through the first half of the year, after Steve Wilks moved over to the sideline to be with his players, the 49ers went from 5-3 through their first 8 games to 7-2 in their last 9. Albeit that other loss was a regular season finale game where they kind of rested quite a bit of their starters. And also they had a little bit of a bump in the road against Baltimore, of course, where their defense gave up 33 points. But either way, he decided to make the change to being on the sideline to where he could make adjustments and be able to talk to his players one-on-one. And Mike Zimmer has always been that. He was that when he was in Dallas the first time he was here. And, he's going to, of course, continue to do that. Now being our D quarter, albeit older, he's going to be on the sidelines, with his second tenure with the Cowboys as our defensive coordinator. I think that this is huge because I feel like it's going to make it's going to make it harder for opponents to get a bead on our defense as consistently and throughout the game like they were able to with Dan Quinn. I feel like with Dan Quinn, it was always our defense builds off always built always would build off momentum, you know, and the game is everything is going our way. But it seemed like any time that there were some bumps in the road and some issues along the way, we couldn't recover from them, because Dan Quinn at times didn't know how to make adjustments. I know a former Dallas Cowboy coordinator that also had a problem with making adjustments who coached on the other side of the ball. But that's neither here nor there. Either way, so I just wanted to, of course, make this a video about that. Another video that, of course, I'm going to also make here in a little bit that I need to talk about. But I just really wanted to get this video out to you guys. So to close, Mike Zimmer is going to be on the sidelines, of course, for us for games. He's always been that, and that's the difference between him and Dan Quinn. I think that can really, with a defense that I already think is still already, pretty well built, with a new attitude and a new defensive coaching philosophy, could definitely, be the difference. Because I will say, I feel like this defense at times has been a little bit overrated. I know that seems crazy, but I just have to keep it a stack. This defense has been pretty overrated at times. Not as good as people think we are, or even our own players on defense think that they are. So with this new mantra, this new attitude, and new philosophy, I think it's going to pay dividends for us and, maybe be a change for our defense all the way around. So let me know how y'all feel about it in the comments, and let me know how y'all feel about this. Do you think this is a great change or something that probably is going to be completely irrelevant? But, I think differently. So, to all my audience, to all of Cowboys Nation, this is Mr. Cowboys Fan, out.